and when I got to 14, I'm turning into a young woman, I'm developing. And they came home one night like they did every other night, but this night I always described something felt wrong. And I ended up taking the tray when I was called by my father back that night. I'd been sat on the bottom of these huge, large wooden staircase that we had. But when I entered, my father first to grab me by my wrist, and with that I dropped the tray. I kept my eyes wide shut, as I call them, but I was thrown onto a table, and he was the first person to rake me out of the 8 men there, whereby I was punched, I was kicked, I was bitten. They broke me. They stole my innocence, but they physically broke me and mentally broke me. And people look upon you as though you're dirty, not understanding it's not my hands that are dirty. It's those people that abused me sexually or physically hurt me or mentally hurt me.
Take your time, Nina.
It wasn't just one swing of the arm. I was repeatedly punched, repeatedly thrown around, repeatedly stamped upon, whereby my hip was displaced. And, the body doesn't forget.
Nina Aouilk, welcome to Figuring Out, and thank you very much for taking the time for being here today. I think today is going to be somewhat of a difficult conversation. More than anything, I just want to say thank you for your bravery and for having been so open talking about your journey, which we're going to get into in a moment, and for being brave enough to tell the world about it.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
So Nina, you're an activist, you're a life coach, but your story somehow started from you being a rape survivor. Very inhuman, barbaric. I have no words to describe what that would mean. This is how your journey started. I'm going to leave the floor to you for you to introduce yourself, because I think you can only do justice to it.
Okay, no, thank you. So I am Nina Aouilk. I'm a survivor of an honour-based killing. As you said, childhood abuse. So I was a modern day slave, and without even knowing. And it took somebody from the outside to explain to me that when you're not allowed to integrate with your family, you're not allowed to talk to them, when you are held in your room in the way that I was from the age of 6, that you are a modern day slave. For me, it was just my life. I didn't know any different. But from the age of 6, I was literally in my room all the time, and I would only be called out when something needed doing, whether it be the cooking, the cleaning, or if they just needed something, that somebody had come to visit and they needed the tea making. And that was my life. I went to school, I came home. I didn't speak to my parents like we're speaking now. I wasn't allowed to. I didn't have conversations with my brothers because, again, I wasn't allowed to. I didn't sit with them watching television on a nice, beautiful sofa like this because I wasn't allowed to. So as I describe it, their rooms were very colourful and mine was different shades of grey, because it was a very basic room and I wasn't given the same privileges as my brothers. Being the youngest of 3, with 2 older brothers, they had those privileges because they were born a boy and I was born a girl. And girls are treated differently in my culture, as you know, maybe. Yeah, but they are treated very differently. So we don't necessarily get seen. We definitely don't get heard. If you try to speak out, you're a disruptive, you're a problem, something wrong with you. So you stay quiet. And I didn't speak out too much. I didn't say anything. And it wasn't until, like you said, at 14, I was a victim of a very horrendous, horrific, horrible rape by my father and his friends, which literally broke me. I recently been describing myself as a little flower. And the petals had been pulled off so many times, and suddenly that flower had been snapped and it broke. And I can't describe it any other way, because I was a very innocent young child, and that's the only way I can describe it. But that led on to a forced arranged marriage where one of the offenders came forward and said that he would take me, and my father paid him in a large sum of money and gold. As you know, in our culture, we have a lot of gold. We have a lot of things that are worth money, like clothes. It's crazy to think about it, but there were suitcases of clothes, expensive clothes, because some of our clothes are, they're ordained with sequins and jewels, and they were very expensive. And my father gave him at least 2 suitcases of clothes, a whole load of Indian jewelry, 24 karat gold, as you may know, and the listeners may know. But I was traded, and that's the only other way. And that again that's a form of trafficking, because I was given to him just for sexual reasons so that he could use me as a sex slave. And I was 15 while all of this is happening. My mother-in-law had me as a servant, a domestic servant, so I would do all of the cooking and cleaning. Again, I didn't know any different, so I saw it as that. But the sex side, I had never encountered that. So for me, home was better than this place I was suddenly at. But I stayed there for 4 long years, and it doesn't sound a long time, 4 years. You know, looking back now, when I've started this journey, I think, well, has it only been 2 years since I've really been speaking out? It seems like so much longer, but those 4 years seemed like 40 years. They just seemed to just drag on, because every day I was dreading what was about to happen. And psychologically, it was like living in a nightmare, and waking up to the nightmare and sleeping in the nightmare. It just wouldn't stop. And when I did go back to my parents, because of the advice of some people I met at work, I wasn't met in the way that I had romanticized in my head. I was met with, as I say in my TED talk, furious fists, and they had the intention only to kill me, because honor killings are a thing in 2023. They were a thing in whenever it was. It happened to me, you know, I was 21, and it happens year in, year out. People think it doesn't happen, but it's very easy to hide things in our community, in my community, I should say, and other communities like it, whereby nobody speaks up. We're not supposed to. We're supposed to stay quiet. We're supposed to stay polite. And if you speak up about things like rape, it's shameful, and people look upon you as though you're dirty, not understanding it's not my hands that are dirty. It's those people that abused me sexually or physically hurt me or mentally hurt me. It's upon them, not us. And I want people to start talking up, to take that power away from those who abuse, so that we can stand together and make a change about it. Because by speaking up, since April, I've had over 14,000 people contact me, and I've responded to more or less nearly every person. And people say, well, how can you do that? But sometimes, like the message today, every interview I've done, somebody will come forward, which stops me from stopping, I'll be honest.
And that's power.
Yeah.
And that's power to you.
Oh, thank you. I don't think I sometimes actually acknowledge these things. But today I got a message from a white British man, middle-aged man, who said that he's okay now, but he resonated with my story. He resonated with the fact that he went through childhood trauma, and his mother was very abusive. So it's not always the fathers, you know, I understand that. And it's not always in just my culture. It's in every culture. It's just that I speak out from a British Punjabi born person, saying that I was treated differently because of my culture. But yes, it happens in every culture. Not everyone from my culture is bad, just like not every person from a white British family is bad. So, you know, I don't want people attacking me. I've had enough, guys, leave me alone. I don't want to be attacked anymore, because I'm not saying anything bad about the country or the people. I'm saying that this is very, very common, because a lot of people that have contacted me are very young girls like yourself from the Asian community, be it India, China, Malaysia, you know, Fiji. I've had so many people, but this particular gentleman reached forward just to say he resonated with my story, and it helped him. It helped him not to feel alone. And often when we're suffering, and you've heard of that term, suffering in silence, people almost mute themselves not to speak out. And it's important to speak out. And I do it even though it hurts me, so that other people can understand they're not alone, that I have created now a non-profit where they can come to, and that, you know, we can help them. My journey led me to the attempted honour killing, I'll go back, whereby my parents knew I was coming back from this marriage, this arranged marriage, which has only been my only marriage. And they were waiting, you know, my brother was there, and they beat me and they broke my arm and my jaw. And I say that so fluently, but you have to understand how many times you have to be punched before your arm or your jaw is broken. You know, it wasn't, sorry.
Take your time, Nina.
It wasn't just one swing of the arm. I was repeatedly punched, repeatedly thrown around, repeatedly stamped upon, whereby my hip was displaced. And, you know, the body doesn't forget. It's somebody asked me if I was in a car accident because I went to a chiropractor's, and he could tell by just touching me that something untoward had happened in my hip. So you don't really get over these things. They hurt. It hurts for me to sit here and say that. But they were monstrous. They were so angry. And I was just a small girl like you at that time. And I had no way of defending myself against these two grown men. I eventually did escape, and I describe myself as lying in a bath of my blood because there's no other way of describing it. I remember people used to do these sponsored things where they would lie in a bathtub of beans, and I was literally in that figurative bathtub, but it was full of my blood. And the blood was not only in that bathtub, but it was dried upon my skin. And every time I moved, I felt it, which is a horrible feeling. But I did escape, and I escaped because I was being sent to India, which is a common thing. Girls get sent to India all the time, or they get sent to Africa or Pakistan, wherever the case may be, and they disappear. And people have written into me saying, I need help because I went to school with somebody and she disappeared and I knew something was wrong, but I didn't do anything. And now psychologically, I've seen your story. I know I could have done something. So there's a lot of messages getting across to people in a different way, depending on who that person is receiving it. But the main thing is that all of these non-profits, all of these people that have set up non-profits before to do with honour, gender-based violence and honour killing, I'm very direct, I'll say it as I see it, they haven't really made as much of a wave as they think they have. Within, a few months since April, I've managed to reach 50 million people. And I was having this discussion with my son the other day that we don't really quantify that. Mm-hmm. If you think about, there's you and I, there's two of us, and if there was 10 more people, that'd be 12 of us. And, if there was 1,000, this room would be full. So to understand what actually a million means, I feel like I need to do maybe an imagery for people. And then there's 50 million people that have sat through a 20-minute video and watched it and understood that this is called an honour killing, that it is cultural, that sexual abuse is a thing, and people don't speak out, and good people are being hurt, and children are not being protected.
And it's still taking place.
And that it's still taking place. That's huge. So I know that even my daughter said that not many people don't know what an honour killing is. I went to America.
Where's the honour in honour killing?
Well, my TED talk is called There Is No Honour in Killing. And, in my culture, it's called izzat, which means respect. And the whole reason I was why they tried to kill me was that I'd left an arranged marriage. And it was, what would people say? How will I be able to go out into public? And you didn't have a child in those 4 years. So people already are talking. And what will I do now? They don't care about the child. They care about everyone else. They don't sit and listen. They don't hear us. They don't want to know. It's always about their preconceived idea of what is right and wrong. And, it's so sad. And as a parent, I've learnt myself, I need to sit and listen sometimes. I need to not talk. I don't need to necessarily give an answer when I'm having one of my children come forward and tell me how they feel. I just need to listen, because children want to be heard, and they should be heard. And as a child, I really wanted to be heard. I often feel still, even though I've reached so many people, that I'm not heard, because social media has a tendency to chuck me off or give me warnings or block me. Or like today, I've realised that the last interview I did has had a warning put on it, which tends to mean that it won't be seen as much as it should.
But why though? I mean, we were talking about this earlier in the kitchen before we started the podcast, and I was telling you, oh, amazing, your video had 2 million views. And you said, well, the one back in the summer had 50 million views.
Yeah.
You have such an outrage. This is your journey. This is your story. And I want to come back to one of the earlier points that you said. It is still taking place. Yeah. There's this Cambridge paper that I came across that it's quite interesting. I'll probably send it to you. And they've did this research back in the Middle East, and the number of people, especially, and I would say boys, not even men at this age, 15-year-old boys who find it okay to subject violence against women. And what's interesting is that in that research, it said it doesn't stem down to even the religious belief, but the idea of patriarchy and how normal it is to inflict violence on women. So research still points to that it's still taking place. Like, the United Nations had research papers saying, well, apparently it's actually happening and it's been inflicted by men who are actually close to the partners. So women are being violated and the violence is actually coming from the partners. So going back to your story, if I may ask, at what point, maybe setting the scene for the audience. So your parents, you said, are from Punjab. Were they always in the UK?
No, they moved over here in the 1960s. There was an influx of people moving over. They were encouraged by, the empire, as they called it back then. I'm rolling my eyes. But they were encouraged to come over to work. So my parents did come over, and I've described it 1,000 times, for obviously not to your audience, that they packed very tightly in their suitcase their cultural beliefs. Like we pack suitcase to travel. If I'm going to Spain, I'm going to pack my sunglasses and my swimsuit, and I'm going to pack a nice summer dress and a hat. They were packing their belief systems, the way the culture should and shouldn't be, what other people have told them, the way their parents have taught them. So that programmed mindset, they actually packed so tightly. And whereas people in India, Africa and the Middle East have moved forward slightly, those people that have moved away, and they're not just in England, they're in America, Australia, I get so many messages from, they have still kept and retained that level of what's okay and what isn't okay, that belief system. And I call them cultural crimes because I can't think of anything else that they are.
And so you were born in the UK?
I'm born and raised in the United Kingdom.
And this happened in the UK?
This happened in a place called Leicester, which is probably 2.5 hours from where we're sat.
Which is really, again, another chilling evidence that it happens even in very developed countries, right?
Definitely. I mean,
the underreported cases.
Yeah, but Bristol University recently did a research, like you were saying. And I know the lady that took out the research, and she sent out their work that they did was very long and detailed, and they interviewed so many people. This is the way they do a research paper, for those who don't know. They will interview scores of people all around the city, all around the country, all around the United Kingdom to bring forward this evidence. Because what you have to understand is I am not a statistic. I will never be a statistic. My sister, who we will discuss in a minute, she is not a statistic. So they had gathered all of this evidence, and I sat in Parliament while they were revealing this evidence, and they said that honour-based killings, forced arranged marriages, child sexual abuse, domestic violence within the Asian culture is rife. I'm not making it up. We have evidence it is happening. I've got no vengeance or hatred in me to bring forward that I'm trying to punish people. My intention is to bring it to awareness so that teachers, medical staff, people that work in care systems, they can look after those people that need the help. And especially those people that are suffering can come forward.
What's scary is that, and I believe the research that you've said, because before speaking to you, I did look it up as well, and the statistics are chilling. And what's even scary is that so many cases would go unreported.
Yeah, because of the stigma, because of the shame. And often there's, as I've always described, I had this best friend called fear. And fear stops you from seeing things as black and white as I can see them today. Mm-hmm. Before then I couldn't even see. I literally had my eyes down, but with that, throughout my life, I felt I was blinded. I was blinded with the knowledge that I can step out and have that freedom that I've got now. And for those people who don't understand about freedom because they've never had to really think about it, that they're allowed to go out to Starbucks or they're allowed to even move around their own home freely, they won't understand it. So I try and describe in detail what my childhood was like to bring that forward. And it does upset me because it wasn't easy, and it's not easy acknowledging it. But I know by telling everyone, somebody out there is going to resonate and understand as well.
I'm sure. I sit here very composed and listening to you, but the first time I came across your story, I cried, and it stayed with me for quite some time. And I'm very, very appreciative of how brave you are telling your story. For context, and maybe you have touched on it at the very beginning, but I was so captivated listening to you. When you were first sexually abused, if I may, that was by your father.
So my job, as I always describe it, was to cook for everybody. My father had a habit of going to the pub. In this country, we've got pubs. And he would come back with a whole of his friends, because back then in the 80s, the pubs would close at a certain time. And they didn't go on till, the licenses, I think, were till 10:30. They couldn't serve after that. So people would come back to our house. I would be responsible to make food, on a tray. I would take it in every day. I would take it out. And from the age of 6 up to 14 and longer, I was doing this. I think until I was 16, I did this. And that was my job, but I had to wait every night. I couldn't just cook the food and leave it. My father was a bit of a clean freak. He was a control freak, clean freak, did not like mess. So my job was then to pick up everything, take it away and clean it. Then I could go to bed. And I'm a young child. I should be asleep, but I'm not, you know, and when I got to 40 and I'm turning into a young woman, I'm developing. And they came home one night like they did every other night. But this night, I always describe something felt wrong. You know, our bodies almost have this system inside that's telling us that this is not safe, this is not okay, you need to move. But obviously I had nowhere to go. And I'd served up the food. They were exceptionally loud, and they were loud. They'd been drinking continuously. And, you know, some things in my childhood, the memories are very clear. And this particular memory I only admitted to my children 2 years ago that it happened because something triggered me, and I knew why I wasn't able to get into relationships, and it was because of this and the trust issues. And I ended up taking the tray when I was called by my father back that night. You know, I'd be sat on the bottom of these huge, large wooden staircase that we had. But when I entered, my father, as you described, was the first to grab me by my wrist. And with that, I dropped the tray. I kept my eyes wide shut, as I call them, but I was thrown onto a table, and he was the first person to rape me out of the 8 men there. But it wasn't a rape in that respect. I don't know what a rape is per se. You know, what if I was to Google it, I don't know what would come up. But all I can tell you from my personal experience that this was a very degrading, barbaric attack, whereby I was punched, I was kicked, I was bitten, I was raped, I was just passed around, and I was almost like just mistreated to a point where I describe it that they broke me. They stole my innocence, but they physically broke me and mentally broke me. And I just didn't want to live after that. I had no desire to exist because they had taken that from me, that life. It was as though they had fed themselves savagely upon me and left me completely drained and completely without anything. And how somebody out there can say, well, she should be ashamed of speaking about this, is beyond me, because instead of empathy or being caring, you know, a lot of the people attack me in the same way. So I'm almost bringing that emotion forward of having lived through that, and then I'm attacked again. And it's not an easy place to be, which is why people don't speak out. You know, it's a painful place to revisit, and it's not something I would wish upon anyone.
I can never stop saying how brave you are, Nina, and I'm sure people will relate to what you're saying, to your whole story here. So thank you for your bravery. Can I ask you, how's life been after this? How did you... It's difficult for me to say, but how did you manage to see the light at the end of this? Well,
after the honour killing attempt, I actually ran away, you know, and it wasn't like I got up and ran because I couldn't move. I crawled, not even crawled, I sort of shuffled myself out of that house. I always describe my dog, because we had this beautiful dog, and she was my first friend, real friend. She was that first comfort person in the house. She would sit at the top of the stairs and look down upon me when I was cooking. And, you know, the door was open. I can even see her now while I'm talking about it. But she was this beautiful golden shepherd. And the day that I escaped because they were sending me to India. So I managed to get from...
Sending you to India for what?
To be killed. That was the plan, you know, because I did get pregnant, and after the abortion, they had spoken about the ways of killing me, but I got married. Somebody had taken the problem away for them, so that talk had stopped. But since a young age, and I'm sure there's a lot of other people out there that listening from my culture especially, you're told they're going to bury you in the back garden or the floor, under the floorboards. That's just a threat.
Oh my God.
But it's not really just a threat. You know, I believe my father would have, knowing what I know now about him. I know that he would have definitely killed me. And I escaped to end up in a hospital where I was really ignored. Before I got to the hospital, I'd got to a police station where they were starting to help me. The policeman was starting to help. But as soon as I mentioned the word honour killing, he stopped. And I know that was because he didn't know. He wasn't maybe culturally aware or had the intelligence of what to do when somebody comes in with this problem, I guess they saw it as. but the police are there to serve and protect us.
Of course.
So my argument, now is, what do you need to know from me so that I can help you to serve and protect everyone else, because I didn't get it. And people say, don't you want to press charges? Of course I want to press charges. I still want to press charges. If there's someone out there that can help me, please come forward, because I have tried. I've not been able, but I deserve justice as an example to others. But I know that I say to others now, press charges now, because there's a small window of opportunity that you have. 2 years is nothing for domestic violence or any kind of abuse. If someone damages your pillow, if I was to set this pillow on fire, as my ex-partner did, which we'll get to, you can actually press charges against me, even if it's in 10 years' time, because that's your property. So if somebody damages your property, you're able to press charges. But if someone damages you, you can't do anything about it.
Isn't our body our property?
Apparently not. Apparently it's not legally protected.
It's I have no words for this, really.
No, I mean, a lot of people don't understand, and they say, well, people came out after so long with cases and they press charges against these people. A lot of the time that's created by a wealthy lawyer or a group of people that are being led for a reason. There's a lot more politics behind it than people realize. It's not just I work with the Sikh Awareness Society. It's a gentleman there, his name's Mohan, and I said to him, can I press charges? Can you help me? And he's really good. He helps people from old cases to press charges. But he said, you've gone so in the public eye with it that a jury won't be able to sit there and give a unbiased decision. And apart from that, your case is quite complex, because there's not one person, there's more than one. So gathering them, and you don't know who they are. We can't charge your father if we can't charge the others. They all have to be charged. So I don't understand law. I just know the police do what the law tells them to. So I'm trying to get laws changed, and, I'm crazy enough to think I can. So I'll just continue to do that. But going back to when I ran away, I did not get the help from the police, and I did end up in the hospital for a long time. And I did end up on the doorstep of my friends who had told me to go back home. And it's quite important that I go to this part of my story, because I ended up being in a relationship with that person for 23 years. And I didn't understand about dating. I didn't understand about holding hands or cuddling and loving each other. Admittedly, when he ever tried to kiss me, I didn't like it, but I didn't know what you were supposed to like. And I knew that he had other partners, but I thought, again, that's just the way it is. I knew that he was out all the time. I thought that's just the way it is. I had no self-worth, because from childhood, I'd not had any self-worth, but I stayed with him for a few reasons. We originally became friends when we worked in the same place, but he and his partner at the time had offered me a place to go to if I ever needed it. So that's why I ended up on his doorstep. And his partner at the time, she had left, she'd gone. And he said, I've got 2 rooms you can share. You can share my flat as long as you pay me rent. He was very strict. Right. I needed to pay him. And I thought, fair enough. My arm was still in a sling, but I got a job in the local council, it was fine, and I paid him rent. And I was kind of figuring it out, because we don't have this textbook we can read and how to figure life out. We don't know whether we're coming or going sometimes. Sometimes we'll sit on the sofa and want to hold our head in our hands. Sometimes we're like, this is good. I'm happy. And that's where I was at. But I had no real meaning to my life. I was now a black sheep, no family, no community. I was being searched for, but I was kind of in limbo.
Did you feel any better just at that particular stage?
It felt safer.
Okay.
If I felt safer, I felt he was almost my hero that had given me this place. He was my knight in white, my knight in shining armor that had come on his white horse and saved me. Even though he'd done none of those things, I was just away with the fairies, because that was me. I was always romanticizing every situation. And we went to a party because he said, oh, the landlords are having a birthday party. Do you want to come? And I was like, well, never been asked that before. I'd love to go. And when I got there, I had a great time, I'm not going to lie, from what I remember. But he was ploughing me with drinks of Coke. And I thought it was Coca-Cola, not knowing. Never really had fizzy drinks in my life the way it was. I didn't even get food, let alone drinks to drink. So I couldn't differentiate between things. And I became very drunk because he had ploughed the Coke with alcohol. So when I got back to the flat, I don't remember anything. I just remember passing out and months later not having a period. And then the next month I didn't have a period. And not knowing that he'd actually raped me and he'd taken advantage of me in that sense, and said to me very blasé that, well, you wanted it, you know, and then who was I to say, no, it's not the way I want it. All I focused on, and that's part of my personality. If we go into a situation, I'll tend to find the good things as opposed to the bad things. And I focused on the baby. Suddenly I had this life in me and I felt like I was needed. I felt like there was a reason. And I gave birth to a baby girl who changed my life, because suddenly I'd broken that circle of not celebrating a child that's born a girl. I'd taken that away. And, you know, I went on to live with him for 23 years. And it was a very violent relationship, but I have 3 wonderful children out of it. I did lose a baby who was my 3rd child because of domestic violence. He pushed me down the stairs and I ended up in hospital, and I gave birth to my 3rd child, Tyler, who died shortly after birth. And I wouldn't wish that upon anyone, because my arms were empty, you know, and my pillow was never dry for as long as I could remember, because I missed what I had lost. I felt guilty. I felt that I was the one that should have gone, not him. And life for me stood still for quite some time back then. I just couldn't move forward. And life went on. You know, my daughter went off to study her first degree. She became a biomedical scientist, but she also started to question her father as to, why don't you treat mummy the way she should be treated? Why are you stopping us doing things? And he didn't like it, so he stopped our communication. And I used to secretly send her messages, and not thinking about how she was feeling, I would quickly send her a message, delete it, put it back, put my phone back on the table, and that was it. Never asked her.
Because she was not living with you at that time?
She was at university in London, and I never asked her how she was, never asked her how she was getting on. She was always worried about never seeing me again. So it was a really difficult time for her. And my other son stood up to his father. I sent him to boarding school, and I ended up with just me and my youngest. And my youngest ended up getting an autoimmune disease from the stress. He ended up in the hospital, and when we came out of hospital, my daughter received a text message saying, I'm sorry. And it was me asleep on the sofa, and her brother was slumped on a table. And she knew he'd done something, but she didn't know what. And she rang.
You're scaring me now.
Well, she rang every phone in the house because she'd got this picture trying to wake me up, not knowing if I was actually asleep or dead. And had she not made those calls, I won't be sitting talking to you today, because when she did wake me up, I went into the kitchen to get a glass of water because my throat was so dry. And when I got there, I turned literally and looked at the cooker, and he turned all of the taps on. So the whole house was full of gas, and it was literally waiting to explode. And I've had people say to me, you can't die from that, but you can. You can die from the inhalation of carbon monoxide. But you can also, if I'd got up later on and tried to put the light on the switch, the whole house would have exploded. So it was an attempted murder on both the life of myself and my son.
I feel so speechless, and I actually felt my body go so numb for a sec when you were telling me about how that night went for you.
I mean, this morning someone told me that it's boring because I keep saying the same thing. Somebody's supposed to be a family friend, which really upset me. It's not easy sitting here and saying that I went through a horrendous childhood. I want to sit here and say my mum loved me, my dad loved me.
Of course.
But the truth is they didn't. And there's a lot of people out there that are not loved. They don't have a mummy the way I am. They don't have a dad. My children don't. But I tell it because I know there's so many people that are out there waiting to hear my voice, and every podcast has a different audience, different people hear it. And some people do watch my podcasts over and over, and I cry and I can't help it because I'm not robotic. I'm a real person, and I'm integral. I promised you I'd be here, and I'm here.
You are.
Am I tired? Yeah, I'm really tired.
Imagine.
Do I know the difference it makes? Yeah. So what do? Do I stop, or do I carry on and help others? You know, I can't not help others. I believe this is my purpose and my path, and the reason I'm still alive. I've had so many attempts on my life. We've skimmed over my story because there's so many other podcasts people can watch if they want to find out more. But I should not be sat here And every day I'm grateful for the fact I am. But I've been down recently because I just feel there's so much suffering. And I know there has to be suffering out there, but it seems so unfair. But the message is like horrendous. Yesterday I spoke to a lady who wants to burn her parents' house down because she's so full of anger. And I'm trying to tell her that she's got to focus on her and her child, not what she hasn't got. And I think that's the voice that sometimes one person can change your whole outlook. When I look back on my childhood, the taxi driver, the lady at the abortion clinic, so many people, even recently, somebody called Mandy, so many people have been like angels in my path. Nikki, that gave me a place to stay 7 years ago when I had nowhere to go. There have been so many people, and that one person I still carry forward from the age of 15. So if I have that ability within me, if you have that ability in you, Gemma, would you not give that? Would you not give that message of hope to somebody else, knowing it can change not just their life, but their children's lives or their family's life?
Nina, I thought there was so much beauty in your pain, especially when you talk about your children, and I think this is probably a good time to bring in Celeste, or I should say Dr. Celeste, in our frame, because we do have one of your children here today.
Yes. Hello. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Welcome to Figuring Out. You were sat there listening to your mom's story all this time, and you probably heard about this, and you probably heard the story quite a few times now, but not until a few years ago. Tell us about it. When was the first time, or when did your mom tell you about her past?
So the first time my mum told me about part of her past and what she'd gone through was a few years ago. She called me into her bedroom. She sat me on the bed, and I was a bit anxious because I wasn't sure what she was going to say. I knew the situation with my father. I knew that he was abusive towards her. And so I was sort of confused as to, I was thinking, in my head, I'm thinking, what's she going to tell me? And she told me part of her past. She didn't tell me everything then. She told me part. And I just felt pain. I felt her pain. I felt sadness. I think at the time I probably wanted to cry, but I felt that, she's been through this. I haven't been through it. So I have to be there for her, and I have to be strong, and just sort of, it's one of those situations where if anybody tells you anything of that sort of nature, it's that thing of, well, what do you say? How do you best, how do you best sort of deal with that? How do you best provide the support to that person? There's no real rule book on this is what you should do, and this is how you should react, and this is how you should act in that situation. I think part of it was shock, because I knew that my mum had left, sort of run away from her family, and that's all I knew. So to find out some of what she'd been through was heartbreaking, because although I knew how my father was towards my mother, I thought, how could, your family do this to you, and how, why would your family do that to you? But for me, it was confusing, because although my father wasn't very loving towards us, my mum always was. And I thought, well, you've always shown me love. Why would somebody not do that to you? So it was hard. It was very difficult to sort of find that out.
Speaking of mothers, and that's probably one of the things that I didn't ask when you were telling me about your story, where was your mother in all of this?
Yeah, a lot of people think that she couldn't do anything. And I always say that women play a huge role in our community as part of the offenders too. They help in their own way by not speaking out or not making an effort to console that person that's being abused or forced into marriage, or whatever the case may be. So she is part of the whole thing. And I wished at some point she had extended a hand, a loving hand, in the way that I can do to Celeste. Just to give that contact, that physical contact, that I've got you, you're here. If I was to say to you, it's okay, Gemma, I've got you, it just makes you feel better. I might not be able to do very much, but it's that extension of love, and she never gave me that.
Did you ever try to reach out to Celeste, or did Nina offer to still allow you to have a relationship with her?
with her parents, with her mother. No, so actually her family came back into contact with us. I think it's probably better if my mother explains this.
Yeah, my brother came into contact after 15 years because he'd attacked his partner at the time with a hammer. And the police sort of said, she's not going to press charges, but we'll put you into a program and you have to be really honest and write down what you've done wrong, and you have to get the person to sign it that you have asked for forgiveness, and you'll go into a counselling and some sort of program. And that's what he did. And he turned up on my doorstep. It's not that hard to find people nowadays. He found us and I was shaking when I opened the door. I thought, why is he here? You know, unannounced, and I still feared him. Her father instantly took to him and they became very close. But they had something in common with the whole abusive nature that they both held. But I did go to my mum's house one day and I did take my two sons. They were quite young, and I actually left without even putting my shoes on out of fear, because I realised very quickly that they weren't any different. Looking at the carpet upon which I had been raped and beaten on triggered me hugely. But also their words, they weren't really changing their attitudes. They still had the stigma and the shame, and they were not happy that I wasn't married. They were not happy I was not with an Indian person. They didn't even understand that my journey had led me that way, that I wasn't in a relationship. They didn't offer me any help of sorts. They wanted things from me. And the toxic behaviour, it was just still there. And I had been so unaccustomed to the Indian society and the cultural way that they lived. I stepped out of it. I was now living a different kind of life. I couldn't accommodate it. I just repulsed it. I was pushing it away, saying, I don't want this. And I turned my back and I never spoke to them again. And now they're sending death threats because they want me to stop speaking, because I've shamed them. It's their izzat that, you know, that they've been belittled in public because I'm telling my truth.
Celeste, when we were discussing earlier, there was one thing that you said there that really struck me. You said when you were going to Coop, and for those not in the UK, that's like going to the grocery store, and you were going to buy milk, and you would come back with a receipt. What would you be doing with the receipt as a normal person would be doing, and what would your mum advise you to do?
So I remember when I moved away to university, I knew things weren't right when I lived in the house. Moving away to university just gave me a sense of freedom. I was able to do a lot more than I was. I wasn't under that control. And I would go back and visit the home and see my family, you know, on weekends, as you do when you go away to university. And I remember one weekend I went back and I went to the co-op, to the grocery shop with my mum just to buy some milk. And it was a quick journey there, quick journey back, grabbed the milk, and we were gone. And we got back home and I was throwing the receipt in the bin. And my mum was, you know, running to the bin to grab the receipt. And I was like, what are you doing? Why do you need the receipt? She's like, well, it's got the timestamp on it for when I paid. And I just looked puzzled. I looked confused. I said, well, why do you need to keep that? And she said, well, I called your dad when we were leaving to go to the shop. And then I've sent him a message to say that we're back. And so he can then check the time between each of the messages to make sure I haven't been and done anything in between then. And I said, well, what could you have possibly done? You just gone to the shop to buy milk. I just thought it was crazy and bizarre, but that was the life that she was living, controlled to that point. My mum and my youngest brother were locked in their bedrooms at night. It did get to the point where eventually we weren't allowed to talk. Our communication was stopped. My father would have my mother's phone. I would get a text message, maybe every day, sometimes every other day, where he would fall asleep. She would quickly take her phone, run to the bathroom and send a message just to say we're okay, and then don't reply. And then the phone was snuck back and, you know, by my dad while he was sleeping. And I would sort of be anxiously waiting for that text message all day, or, you know, every other day, whenever it was that I would receive it, I was waiting to receive a text message to say that they were okay, because otherwise I had no other way of knowing whether they were okay or not.
Was there a particular time when your fears actually was somewhat of a different level, way beyond the fears that you were feeling?
I think when things got to the point where the communication was stopped and I was getting these messages every other day, or, you know, daily, whenever it was, at that point I thought, well, things are really wrong if, you know, she's having to wait until he falls asleep to send me a text message just to say that they're okay. I had this constant fear that I was just going to get a phone call or a knock on my door from the police to say that they're dead. And that was a very real reality that I was living in.
When did you leave, Nina?
I left shortly after that. My son actually spoke out of school and said that he couldn't handle it anymore. It was like opening a can of worms, and they were just everywhere. He was just telling them all sorts of things about the abuse, the mental abuse, physical abuse, the money side of it as well, because my money was being held as well. He was talking about the different shelves in the fridge, because there was one shelf for my partner, which was all Marks and Spencer's or Waitrose food, and the rest was for the children and myself. He controlled things to every extent that he could. He told them about being locked in his room and opening, the key would open in the morning. And he just had enough. He had just not being able to cope with it anymore. And then we were removed by social services, and the police were involved, that they were at hand if we needed them. And that's where they put me into a safe house, as it's called, temporarily. And then I became homeless 7 years ago.
So as you're sitting here with your mom, and we've spent some time together now, and I know you two have a very strong bond. When you look at Celeste, and I should say Dr. Celeste, for having completed your dentistry, for having such an amazing journey that it did look up before you came here. What does that mean to you? Seeing this come, I think people speak about coming full circle in a different way. You've had a journey that no one should have to go through. No woman should have to go through such a thing. But now when you see it coming full circle almost, with Celeste completing her studies, your other two children having accomplished things differently, but in each of the ways.
Yeah. I mean, I'm proud of my children, as most parents are, but they've not had it easy. It's not been easy. And they've seen things they shouldn't, which is why I say to parents out there, if there's a woman or a man suffering from domestic violence, that it's not just you being affected, it's your children too, and they don't deserve that. Celeste is incredibly resilient. People think I am, but she is incredibly resilient, as are my other two sons. And I'm proud that we've broken away from it, because we're now in this lovely place where life isn't perfect, but it's a great life to be living. And we're getting there slowly, but we're enjoying our journey, as we spoke about earlier, enjoying the stages of our leading up to our goals or our dreams. And we're really grateful to be here. And I'm grateful for the children, because they have always been my pivotal. They've been the reason I've carried on going, having them each time I had them, it was a pivotal moment in my life, bringing it forward. It encouraged me to do more for them. So, I'm exceptionally proud of Dr. Celeste, and it's Dr. Arjun as well. I've got another one in the house.
Amazing.
And I'm more proud of the youngest, because he survived death in a different form to me. But he was with me there, and he has got through it, and he's slowly but surely getting onto his own path, which I'm sure will be just as great.
Your mum mentioned resilience there. You have a story of your own.
I do indeed.
So the NHS says that it takes, I think, about 4 or 5 years of dentistry, of studying to become a dentist. And you need to do another 1 or 2 years of dental school. I studied finance, and that was 3 years of undergrad straight into banking. And you have a story there because you attempted dentistry and you said you applied 3 times and got rejected.
Each one of those 3, yes.
Somehow you've managed to get into what you really wanted to do. Tell us about it.
But for me, it wasn't an easy journey. It took me, I think, about 10 years in total to get through everything and to get to where I am today. And I've been qualified for 3 years now, which seems to be just flying by. And I'm just grateful for the position I'm in now. But at the time, there were plenty of times when I felt like giving up, and I thought, well, I'm just not good enough for this degree. And maybe it's just not meant for me. Maybe I'm not one of those people that's meant to be a dentist. Maybe I should think of other options. I looked into other options. I looked into law. I looked into banking, and maybe going down the finance route. I looked at all the options you can think possible. And I just thought, I'm going to be miserable doing any of these. This isn't what I want to do. I knew that dentistry, crazily enough, was my passion, and that was what I wanted to do. And I applied for dental school first time round, got rejected. Applied the second time round when I was studying biomedical science at Queen Mary, and got rejected again. And at the time I had the right predicted grades, I had plenty of work experience, I had all the things, everything was ticked off what I needed. And then I got rejected again. At that point I just thought, I'm going to have to give up on this. Why am I trying, why am I doing this degree? Why am I trying? Why am I applying and putting myself through this stress and going for interviews and just continually getting rejected? What am I doing this for? Do I really want to be a dentist? Is it really worth it? I don't know, maybe people that are dentists might think no. Some people might not. But for me, that's what I wanted to do. And I applied for the third time. And again, as I said, I got rejected. And by that point, I had my degree. I'd worked in the dental field at that point for, I think, at least 4 or 5 months. So I had plenty of experience. I had, in my eyes, the perfect personal statement. I had all the things that I could possibly need and more. And to get rejected again was just heartbreaking. I just thought, what do I even do now? Should I just give up? Should I just do something else? And as I said, I looked through all the other options, but nothing really inspired me. So I took a job that was sort of an open contract. And I thought, well, I'll just do this job for a bit. And it was easy work and it was decent money. Mm-hmm. And I just thought, well, this is easy. I get all my work done in about an hour and I just sit around and go and sit on the terrace, have lunch, have a break. It was great. But it wasn't fulfilling. It wasn't what I wanted to do. I wasn't passionate about what I was doing. And I thought, can I see myself doing this for the next however many years? Absolutely not. And luckily enough, although I probably would have applied for the 4th time round because I'm very determined. Yeah. When I put my mind to something, I like to follow it through. And I did actually get a phone call to say that a spot had come open. Did I want the spot? I was like, absolutely yes. Yes, I'll be there tomorrow whenever, tell me. And I was just so grateful for the opportunity. And actually, you were asking my mum when she left. It was actually on my 2nd day of dental school that she left. So it wasn't the easiest of journeys to get into dental school. And then when I did get there, again, it was difficult because, I then had my family going through that situation. So despite what I've been through, as they say, you grow through what you go through. And I've definitely grown as a person. I mean, even sitting here today and talking to you and doing this, knowing that it's recorded and it's going to go out there to people to watch. If you'd asked me, even 5-10 years ago, could you see yourself doing this type of thing? Absolutely not. Mm-hmm. No, I wasn't a very confident person. I didn't necessarily like talking about myself. I was polite in the sense that I would say hi, introduce myself to people that I didn't know, but I wouldn't be able to just talk to anybody and everyone and just be my full self. Whereas now I'm like, advice to anybody listening, stop caring about other people's opinions and just do what you want to do and do those things for yourself.
It all sounds like a divine timing, especially when you say you got the call and then your mum left on that same day. Mm-hmm. Can I just maybe push you on this one? So going back to your application into dentistry, so you said you applied 3-4 times and you got rejected and you had the grades, you had everything. We sometimes expect, how funny is it that we expect a different outcome for doing things the same way over and over? What was it there that, one, led you to be so resilient? You still wanted to apply, despite having the grades, despite having the work experience, if anything, incrementally better? Or what do you think really changed it for you?
I think because I knew that's what I wanted to do, I always had that in the back of my mind. So anything that I did was sort of working towards that goal. And the goal was to become a dentist. Mm-hmm. Whatever came after that. But that was the goal that I had in mind at that time. And so, as you said, doing the same things, expecting the same results, I made sure that each time I applied, something was different. I had more to show. I had more to give. I could say, hey, look, I've done this now, or I've got this extra. Something funny, Mum is probably going to laugh when I say this, but it's true. It's having that determination to actually want to do something and putting in the effort, because I think it's very easy to give up on things. Mm-hmm. And I think if it's something that you really want to do, then why are you giving up on it?
It was really hard, wasn't it? It was hard getting the knockbacks, the letters, saying that you haven't got in.
There were times when I'd sit and cry and think, let's put on a sad playlist and have a sit and cry to myself, because also, why not? You have to process your emotions somehow. And if you bottle them up, you just explode. So you have to go through it. And it wasn't all easy. It wasn't all rosy. And, I'll just apply again and it'll be fine. No, there were times when I sat and I thought, screw this, I'm going to do something else. I'm just going to go and, I don't know, find myself a rich husband and, I don't know, go and live on a yacht and travel the world. That would have been nice and easy, but no. Put my mind to studying dentistry and here we are today. I think when I put my mind to something, I get there, and it is just through the hard work.
I think the message there is never to give up.
Yeah, it's about things can happen and there'll be negatives, but you just focus on the positive things and say, okay, well, what did I do this time that I can perhaps improve for the next time? And what was good this time that I can carry on for the next time? It's just looking at those things rather than saying, well, they got rejected and that's that, and we'll move on to the next thing. Because it's very easy to do that in all aspects of life, but you don't get results if you don't put in the effort.
Are you proud now looking at your journey?
Oh, I definitely am, I think. And my mum sometimes says to me, she says, think of, 10 years ago, this is the place that you wanted to be and you're there now. Sometimes you need to actually just what you've done.
The journey.
And acknowledge the journey, acknowledge where you are, and, introduce yourself as Dr. Celeste. And I'm definitely proud of where I am today because it's where I wanted to be. And I did put in the hard work and it wasn't easy, but I have got here today. And so that's the main message of my TED talk, is just to say that despite what you might be going through, if you really want something and you put in the hard work and effort, that you will get to that point. And for me, it's something I have to remind myself daily, sort of practicing gratitude, being grateful for what I have, but also knowing what I want next and then putting in the work to get there.
It's so important as well not to delay gratification, because I feel like we're always chasing the next things we want in life, the next best thing. We don't take the time to enjoy what we've got through. To your point, like looking back 10 years ago, this is what you wanted to achieve, this is where you wanted to get to. And I think for me, looking back at my career in banking, I remember that now that you say it, when I was in university, I remember applying almost with such intent for my banking application, spring internship. I was thinking about the summer internship, then the job offer came out. And now I'm like, oh yeah, it's fine. It's a 9 to 5, enjoying it. But no, it took so much effort to get there, but you don't realize it, or actually you don't enjoy it.
You have to acknowledge it. I think acknowledging your journey, sitting in that moment in your journey, life becomes so much better because you're not just looking and focusing on the end goal, like I said earlier. You're focusing on each step and you're saying, right, this is great. I'm enjoying being here today with Gemma and Celeste because it's a time we're not going to get back again, and I've actually enjoyed meeting you after such a long time. So, you've got to acknowledge each given day and each given part of what you're trying to achieve, and you've got to sort of.
But you remind me of the afterlife. There's a particular scene when one of the female characters says to him, what's the point in it anyway, it being death? What's the point in it anyway when death is it? And he goes, the point in what? And she goes, living. And then he goes, well, what if you're watching a movie and there's Kevin Hart in it, and someone comes to you and say, eventually it will be the end of the movie. Would you just switch it off? She goes, yes, because I can watch it again if I want to. And then he goes, well, I think that's the whole point about life. Life is so precious because you can't watch it again. You can't go back to that time spent. And one day you may or may never know, but you might be smelling the last flower. You might be eating the last meal. This might be the last time you're hugging your friends or family. So make the most of it, be passionate about life, but also take time to enjoy the present.
Definitely.
And I feel like there's so much of that we need to do. I definitely need to do. And I think lately I've been trying to journal and have a little diary of tiny victories of the day, even if it's just a few bullet points before going to bed, because I feel like I just need to slow down and enjoy. Let's not chase too much what's out there in the future. Speaking of the future, Celeste and I, we connected earlier in the kitchen. I say in the kitchen for our viewers, that's downstairs. So we have a quick chit chat before we come up to record. And we connected over turning 30. And I did ask her, and I said, did it get to you at some point? Did you feel like you were about to turn 30? And did you panic? And you seem a bit more composed than me because I did panic for a few hours, for a few days before rationalizing it and telling myself that's okay. How was it turning 30 for you? And maybe I probably will have another question for Nina later on, but how was it for you?
So for myself, I was actually just before I turned 30, I was living in Hastings by the coast, and I had the perfect setup with work, but I just wasn't happy where I was living, and I knew I wanted to move, but I didn't know where I wanted to move to. And I just felt, there's that societal pressure. You're turning 30, so you should know where you're at in life, and you should have done this, and this. And it's funny because I remember seeing other people turn 30 and they said, oh, well, I'm okay turning 30 because I've, got my boyfriend and I've got my job and I've got this. And I've seen other people that have turned 30 and said, oh my God, I can't believe I've turned 30 and I'm not even married yet and I've not got this and I've not got that. And I've had friends that have, had that sort of life path that they've had to, strictly adhere to. They have to be married by this age and start to have kids at this age and things. And I'd never felt that pressure per se. But I think being at that point in my life where I was a bit unsure and stable in where I was and where I was going, I sort of knew what I wanted long term, but I didn't know what I wanted to sort of have in the short term. And I thought, well, where do I want to live? And I had this sort of almost panic, and I was a bit thinking, oh, well, I should know this by now. Why don't I know this? And I'd made this decision and I wasn't happy in it. And I just kept thinking, maybe I should be in a relationship by now, and maybe I should have done this by now, and maybe I should have done that. But then it comes back to the gratitude thing and saying, well, actually, things could have been different. I could have been a dentist however many years before, but I wasn't. And I can't change what's happened in the past. I can only sort of move forward and sort of go from where I am, but also just appreciating what I did go through and the fact that I am now a dentist and I am in this position where I can say, where is it that I want to live? And I can make that decision for myself. So I did have the panic, and I did sort of feel the stress, but then I think I just got to the point where I just enjoyed it. And, you wake up on your 30th birthday and you think, well, I feel exactly the same as I did the day before. And it's the same thing that happens on every birthday, sorry. But there's this big pressure put on turning 30. And actually, I remember speaking to one of my mentors and he said, but who said that you have to have done these things by 30? My mum said it to me as well before. And I was like, well, no, I know nobody said it to me. And he actually said that particularly women tend to feel this pressure more than men. Mm-hmm. And I think, I was saying to you before, I've had friends that have said, you've got a biological clock. So, you need to get on with meeting somebody, because if you want to have kids, you need to have them soon in the next couple of years. And although
that I do, scientifically and biologically speaking, it is ticking, but it's not the reason why we should
rush into things.
Or maybe, isn't it better to be with the right person and having the child with the right person and be happy than either raising a child alone, which is not a bad thing if that's what you want, but say you come up from a divorced marriage because you didn't take the time to get to know each other, or so many other reasons why it could fail. Isn't it much better to take out time to find the right person and then figure out whether 100%. You want married or kids?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've had this conversation actually quite a lot recently with friends. I think there's a few of us going through this, and we're in our sort of early 30s, and it's a case of, well, we're all single, and there's that thing of, oh gosh, you're 30 and you're single sort of thing, and it's like it's something on my shoulder that you're looking at, something on my face. And I just think, well, yeah, I'm 30 and I'm single, but I'm happy in who I am. And we were having this conversation earlier. I was saying to you that I don't like the idea of, people saying that you need to find your better half, or that, somebody introduces their partner as their better half. And I think, well, you're not half a person. I'm definitely not half a person. And I'm like, I don't need to be with somebody. I would like to be with somebody, that would be nice. But if I'm with somebody, it's because that person should complement me and add value to my life, and not just be there to complete me. Because I think when you sort of have that mindset, then you're not necessarily going to pick the best person for you. And I think if you're with somebody, ideally you want that to be a lifelong, person that you're with. If that's what you're wanting, if you're wanting a lifelong partner, that should be what it is, a lifelong partner, not just somebody that's right in that moment because they make you feel, a whole of a person, or they make you feel good, rather than adding value to your life. Because I think if I'm going to be with somebody, it's because they're going to add value, not to complete me.
100%. And I think it's so important to mention it or raise it again, because I do feel like, try to be happy on your own. Go out, get that coffee, go on a long walk with that music in your, have your headphones on, listen to music. It's challenging. It's a bit daunting at times. Even solo traveling. I've done it once and I don't know if I can do it ever again. I feel like I'm okay doing it for 3 days. Try go out to at a London restaurant and eat on your own. That's very daunting and very challenging. But I think, to your point, try to be happy on your own, and you can only be happier with someone else. But I love the part where you say you don't need a better half. You don't need your other half, because you're a complete person in yourself. Nina, question for you. At your time, in your days, maybe.
Yeah.
It was a different age.
It was different, yeah.
Who came up with number 30?
I don't know, but
Do you
culturally,
think at this age will move again? Do you think there will be another threshold in some time, and it will be maybe 40? I don't know.
there will. I mean, it changes because, when I first started, well, when I was young, rather, when I started, when I was younger, 16 was the age you had to get married, which is 16 and 18, anything over. Yeah, so I was saying that Celeste did 30 things before she got to 30, and I think I would encourage everyone, go out and push yourselves a little bit. And instead of worrying about getting to a certain age, celebrate it, because I don't think there is a time limit. And in my times, we were told to stay with somebody. If you have a baby, you stay with them. But really, I was with the wrong person, and I knew it from day one. So just having babies with somebody isn't enough. You deserve to be loved. You deserve to be looked after. You deserve to be able to give your best version of yourself. And you can only do that when you're in a position to be there. So I think the emphasis should never be on age. It should be on working on yourself and that self-love.
And what about people who may be in unhappy relationships and find it hard to struggle because society says that you should be with that one person forever now? So,
a lot of people scared of being alone, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
But there's a difference between being alone and you're unhappy on your own to being lonely. And there's a discussion we had the other day. I had it with my son, Dr. Arjun. He was saying that people get confused about being lonely and on your own. And, like you said that you did solo traveling and you were on your own. Doesn't mean you were lonely. You wanted to experience that on your own, I'm sure. Is that right, saying that?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then you've done things as well, haven't you, on your own? I do things on my own all the time, but it doesn't mean I'm lonely. And I'm 50 and I've only 53. I've only just found me. So who puts that age on anything? I'm loving my life. I'm loving the freedom. So I would encourage anybody out there not to settle, to know what you deserve, not to do things because other people are putting the pressure on you, and to make sure you're happy to start with.
So much positivity that I feel like I needed. I don't know about you, Celeste, but I think this is such a strong positive message to women and men out there.
Mm-hmm.
Last question for both of you, or rather, I think this is one that tends to throw people off, but what can I wish for you?
What can you wish for us? Okay, I'll go first. I'm going to speak to your camera. My wish is that anybody listening to this message comes forward after a really honest conversation with yourselves, that if you are struggling with anything in your life, if you've had anyone tell you that you're not good enough when you definitely most are, if someone's told you that you can't do something that you've put your heart and soul into, or someone that's hurt you, whether it's the person that was supposed to protect you whilst you were growing up or at work and has caused you trauma, I want to extend my love to you. I want to tell you that you're not alone, and that my non-profit that I run with Dr. Celeste and Amanda Rafferty, called endhonourkillings.org, has open arms, and those arms are open for you to come into so that I can enable you to start loving yourself and overcoming any trauma you're dealing with. That's my ask.
And what can I wish for you, Celeste?
Oh, see, difficult question. I don't really have a wish. I would just say, I'm just going to leave it there. I don't have a wish.
You're just happy.
I'm just happy.
And grateful for everything you have.
Grateful for every day. I wish that if anybody needs any positivity, that they think of 3 things that they're grateful for in the day.
Or watch your TED Talk.
And watch my TED Talk. That will also help.
We can link there, because there was so much in your TED Talk, and so was there in yours, Nina. Dr. Celeste and Nina, thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
I really enjoyed my chat. I think enjoy is just an understatement. I am so honoured to have met both of you, and equally Nina for suggesting to bring you along, because I think this just completed the whole picture, and seeing your bond did make me miss my mom a little bit. Oh, thank you. And thank you both so much.
Thank you for having us.
And good luck with everything.
Thank you.
And hopefully we can hang out in London.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Thank you.